Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today and taking time out of your busy schedule to celebrate our 6th annual International Women's Day. My name is Donovan Nielsen, and I am the president of Scovan Engineering. I'm honored to stand here before you on the special occasion of International Women's Day as we gather to celebrate the remarkable achievements of women around the world. I have to admit, my wife kept reminding me today's not actually International Women's Day, but I told her just bear with us. I think we can still make this work. The theme for today's event is Elevate, and what a fitting theme it is to acknowledge women across all industries and all cultures. But first, we recognize that the land we are on has been home to the Indigenous peoples of this region for generations, and we want to acknowledge and honor the stewardship of this land by these Indigenous communities. We also want to recognize the ongoing relationships and responsibilities we all have to the land and to reconciliation. As we celebrate, let's reflect on the importance of respecting the land together and striving for a future of cooperation and understanding. The international theme for Women's Day 2024 is Inspire Inclusion. When reflecting on this theme, we were challenged to consider ways that we can engage in the spirit of inclusion and inspire those around us to follow suit. Yes, we are proud of the brand that Scovan has become around community, inclusion, and innovation, but we also want to be intentional to leverage the brand to further elevate these discussions. Many of the conversations we had while planning this event emphasized our desire to elevate conversations, to elevate opportunities, to elevate awareness, accountabilities, to elevate the communities we work with, and elevate stories and needs of women and other underrepresented groups. And so, the theme for Scovan's 6th annual International Women's Day event was chosen to be Elevate. We are honored that the Canadian Heavy Oil Association and Esquao, the Institute for Advancement of Aboriginal Women, have joined us in this event so we could expand our collective reach and make an even more meaningful impact together. So thank you to Andrea, to Carolyn, and to Elder Jackie Bromley for your team support in planning this event. In the spirit of elevation, let us first recognize the women who have paved the way for progress and inspired generations, from trailblazers who shattered glass ceilings to everyday heroes who champion equality in their workplaces. Each one has played a crucial role in shaping the world we live in today. Over the 6 years that we have hosted this event, we have heard many inspiring stories from women that have demonstrated exactly that. And today we have many in the room that play critical roles in elevating those around us. We have CEOs, executives, professionals, leaders, university students, and more. But there are also those around us still early in their journeys and being influenced by those around us. And one of those is my daughter. I don't see many other kids, so I will highlight her. And actually, Jordan is an alumni speaker. She actually spoke at our inaugural Women's Day event 6 years ago when she was 8 years old. So I'm honored to have her here today, and I might be biased, but I found it just as inspiring to hear an 8-year-old talk about her confidence as I did for people that are well advanced in their careers. Elevation, in its essence, signifies upward movement, progress, and growth. As we commemorate International Women's Day, it is not only about acknowledging the accomplishments of women, but also lifting each other higher. In our corporate ecosystem, we have witnessed the transformative impact and diversity and inclusion. When women are empowered, businesses thrive and innovation flourishes. And a great example of this is our own Jane Kavanagh. Jane is one of our senior executives that leads our innovation and product development group. And I have to be honest, if there's a glass ceiling, I think nobody remembered to tell Jane about that. So it's heartening to see the progress our industry has made, but there is more to be done. We must confront and eliminate biases, which was actually one of the themes of a previous International Women's Day we hosted, challenge stereotypes, and dismantle the barriers that hinder women's progress. Elevating women is not just a women's issue. It's a collective responsibility that requires commitment of everybody in this room and in our industry. So to our clients, our partners, our suppliers, to today's sponsors and industry professionals, thank you for collaborating with us to create a business environment that not only strives for collective success, but is also equitable. As we elevate our organizations and our industry, let us be mindful of the impact we can have on society as a whole. And with that, let's get this show on the road. So please join me in welcoming Jennifer Turner, Vice President of CHOA, to the stage.
Thank you. So, first of all, we are so excited to be part of this event. I was so excited to come here today and spend this special time with all of you. And to carry through on these earlier comments, you know, I think for me, I know I'm ready to make International Women's Day, a week. And because it deserves more than a day. And I'm with the Canadian Heavy Oil Association. We are so honored to be a part of this, honored to be here with all of you. I will, before we go on, say a little bit about the work that we do together. We are one of the oldest industry associations in Canada. And, you know, one of our guiding principles is, you know, to connect, to share, and to learn. I really want to put a major emphasis on connect. As one of the oldest industry associations, we have changed a lot over the years. But one of the things that has always made us unique was how we always prioritize the social side of things. And, you know, initially this was just really about networking, in addition to the technical events that we were always known for. But now it's developed into something bigger and I think more powerful. We really, in a conscious way, understand that social innovation, it underpins and empowers everything else, technical innovation included. And, you know, as we find new ways of working together, you know, we collaborate, we form partnerships, and in the process, we morph into something that's elevated and something better. We find ways to achieve things that would have never been possible otherwise. And I will say, I absolutely see that here. I feel it now. I see it when I look around this room. And I see a room full of leaders. I see women that are stepping up, and not just for a better industry, and a fundamentally different industry, but to help create a better world. And, you know, through working together in new ways. And there is nothing, I think, that is more special and more motivating than that. We are honored to be here and to be a part of all of this with you. And coming back to connection, it is absolutely my privilege to introduce our next speaker, Elder Jackie Bromley with Esquao, will be taking the stage and sharing some special words with all of us. Thank you so much.
Well, first of all, you know, I am very honored and to be standing in front of all of you. And, you know, just like Donovan mentioned, Friday is International Women's Day. First of all, before I start this speech, as an Indigenous elder, I have these sacred teachings I always use whenever I make a presentation. And that's just a reminder for everyone to remember that, to take with you. Today, we give thanks to the Creator. Today, the Creator gave us today. And look at all of us in here. The Creator gave this day, International Women's Day, to acknowledge all the women that have worked hard. My teachings is to love everyone, to be honest, and to be humble, and to respect one another, and to always tell the truth, and to always give words of courage and words of wisdom. And now I'm going to be talking. What a delight it is to be here today. Thank you, Donovan, and for your kind invitation to gather with you today and for your support. March the 8th marks International Women's Day, a day to recognize and celebrate women's rights and the strength and resilience of women. Indigenous women face unique challenges and barriers in society, but they have demonstrated remarkable resilience, strength, and leadership in their communities. Since its humble beginning, Esquao, the Institute for Advancement of Aboriginal Women, has served to amplify the voices of Indigenous women on the issues and challenges they face. We are at the forefront of breaking down systematic barriers as leaders and advocates experience in taking a larger issues, shaping policy, and collaborating with our partners. Ongoing community engagement across Alberta allows us to keep an ear to the ground and bring issues and challenges we hear to the forefront. Recent engagements and our survey have confirmed employment and poverty remains key challenges. This despite impressive gains made by Indigenous women. 54% of women we surveyed are working full-time. While that is impressive, a striking 61% report on annual income below $42,000. The economic impact of COVID, coupled with the escalating costs of housing, food, utilities due to inflation and global. Further, the current financial strain on Indigenous women and 25 Spirit Plus people. Our programs and services are developed by and for Albertans, Indigenous women, and are open to all First Nations, Métis and Inuit women, gender diverse, their families, and their communities. Esquao's employment program offers support and services for Indigenous women to successfully enter or re-enter the workforce with the development of individualized plans and direct supports. We help address barriers and prepare our participants for employment. We work with businesses to train and hire Indigenous women across Alberta for over 27 years. Esquao has been offering a range of programs and services aimed at promoting equal access to opportunities for Indigenous women. These programs help Indigenous women improve their skills through trainings and education and to find meaningful employment. Our programs also provide access to certification and college and university We recently hosted our first job fair with over 39 businesses participating. 350 people attended the event with the hope of finding employment. We continue to look for more ways to work with industry leaders so we can offer more training, mentorship, and employment opportunities. On this International Women's Day, let us stand in solidarity with Indigenous women everywhere as they continue to uplift each other for getting a brighter and more equitable future for all. And let us salute the women who have paved the way for us to have the freedoms, choice, and opportunities that we enjoy. We need you to come along with us on our journey to provide mentorship, training, employment opportunities for Indigenous women. Please open the door to greater understanding and support for Indigenous women when women can support their families and the community we all benefit from. Thank you. And in our Blackfoot language, we say, "Chikshikshimachitak." Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elder Jackie. You are a tough act to follow. That was great. Hi, everyone. My name is Jane Kavanagh. I am Vice President of Product Innovation at Scovan. So I wanted to take just one quick second to extend my personal thank you to each and every one of you that are here today. It's been awesome to watch this event grow year after year, and I appreciate the support from everyone here, no matter what capacity you're participating in. We thank you for being here. I'm up here to kick off the main event, so enough of those of us that aren't the keynote speakers talking. We're into the real action now. So I'm excited for all three ladies, but I do have the honor of kicking off the first one. So our first speaker is sponsored by PTW. PTW Energy Services is one of the largest providers of electrical and instrumentation maintenance and construction services in Western Canada. Their highly knowledgeable, safety-minded, and trained trade professionals are dedicated to delivering quality service and exceeding customer expectations. As a result, they are a Canadian leader in customized self-frame, rigid frame, structural steel, and pre-engineered building solutions, providing services to a diverse range of clients through their 40 branch locations. So thank you, PTW. And our first keynote speaker of the afternoon is Anamika Mukherjee. Anamika is a prominent decarbonization and energy transition thought leader in Canada and currently serves as a partner at BDC Capital's Sustainability Venture Fund, focused on early stage investments in clean energy, climate action, sustainable cities, and circular economy technologies. Anamika also contributes to sustainability education as a board member of the Academy for Sustainable Innovation and an advisory committee member for the Calgary chapter of Green Economy Canada. With a diverse career in technology development at Cenovus Energy and strategic roles in policy and innovation at Innovation Science and Economic Development Canada, Anamika has consistently demonstrated both leadership and innovation. Her accolades include the Young Women in Energy Award and recognition by Alberta Oil Magazine and Innovation, Science, and Economic Development Canada. In 2022, she was featured by the Canada West Foundation as a thought leader in decarbonization and energy transition. So please help me welcome to the stage, Anamika.
Good afternoon, everyone. Try not to drop that. So I'm told I only have 10 minutes. I'm going to try to talk really fast because I have so much to say. I've been thinking about how to kick this off, and one of Elevate's themes is inspire inclusion. And it was really easy because on Monday, so one of the things I do just in my spare time is advise startups, not necessarily in energy or climate tech, just startups who want to get going with the right mission, and I help them with their strategy. And on Monday, I met with the founder of a startup. We won't mention who it is because the story doesn't go well. It was a conversation around hiring a COO for the company. And there was an HR consultant in the room. And the founder says, listen, I want to make this really easy. In this day and age, I need you to check off as many DEI boxes. So let's DEI the heck out of it, his words. And so if you can find me a woman of color, preferably indigenous, and if they have a child who has some kind of disability, that would just land this role big time. And even if they're okay, even if they've never held this role before, they'll self-select out. So just find me someone I can talk about publicly. This was my reaction. I was like, excuse me? And he got a 15-minute download from me. And then I stormed off. And then I was thinking about, what is happening? So I'm standing here at the Calgary Petroleum Club. If people remember, if you're as old as me, then you remember there was a time when none of us could be here. Some of you could be here, but most of us could not be here, standing here. And I remember, if you remember Kathy Sendall, who was sort of a champion in breaking down barriers, one time she told a story about how she wore a paper bag and a suit and came into lunch with her male coworkers. She was the first of what I know to break down barriers right here. So we have come a long way. But from Monday's conversation, we have not come far enough. And I'm red in the face because I'm still mad about that conversation. Because to me, inclusion is not checking off boxes. That's not how you elevate. Inclusion is not making sure that you can have a good PR pitch. And it's not saying things like, hey, let's just pick someone who checks off as many boxes. To me, inclusion is simple. It is doing the right thing every single time for all your stakeholders. That's it. If that becomes every single person's North Star in this room alone, just imagine how objective every single decision-making process becomes. It is all about doing the right thing with the information you have in hand, because sometimes you have to pivot, doing the right thing for all the stakeholders. And that might mean, sorry, am I doing something wrong? Oh, sorry. This is better? I thought it was my hands. I could hear that, but. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. And I don't for a second think any of us in the room think inclusion is checking off boxes. But I do want to make the point that it is actually really simple. If you're always making the right decision, the right hiring decision, the right strategic decision, and you're being objective because you are approaching it with every stakeholder in mind, it actually becomes really easy. And let me tell you what is not being done inclusively. Every year, the World Economic Forum has billionaire visitors fly in on their jet-fueled engine, private jets, get picked up by their entourage of diesel-fired Cadillacs and Navigators, and they go into the ski resorts, eat their caviar, drink their champagne, and talk about, dudes, we got to get over fossil fuels ASAP. Meanwhile, 1.2 billion people in this world live without electricity, and over 46% of the world, that's almost half the world, lives under the poverty line that can't make ends meet and cannot pay luxuriously for any kind of energy. That is not the right decision-making process for all stakeholders. That is not inclusion. So I'm going to jump into why each of us have a role in elevating and being leaders. I see all of us as leaders, whether you're a personal leader, people leader, project leader, you run initiatives, you volunteer, you are all leaders. And what often happens with women, I'm sure you can agree, is that we can do 10 things right, but the one thing we do wrong, we beat ourselves over it, oh my gosh, for days and days, and we don't stop. And if you just flip that and play to your strengths, you allow yourself to be vulnerable to your weaknesses. And as leaders, if you are people leaders or aspiring people leaders, your role in leadership is to allow and empower your people to play to their strengths. Because, you know, we've heard all of the words, play to your strengths, that you're the only you and you're unique and all of that. And if I may just channel my inner Brene Brown for a second, I want to say that the minute you show up with vulnerability around your weaknesses, the minute you're okay with addressing your weaknesses because you're just that powerful, playing to your strengths, you bring a community behind you and around you. And all of a sudden, again, any mission that you are on, as long as your North Star is inclusion, it just becomes an easier thing to move towards. Nothing is easy, but it does become relatively more straightforward. The decision-making process becomes more straightforward. So playing to your strengths is something that I encourage everyone I mentor. I've been trying to teach myself that for years and years, sometimes fail miserably at it, but it is a mission. But here's the thing, not everyone will recognize your strengths. Not everyone will appreciate your strengths. And that's because, much like this cartoon, which was intended to inspire some laughter, and it didn't. You know, a shark can't run in the forest, and a lion can't swim in the ocean. When you do always play to your strengths, when you recognize your strengths, when you're surrounded by peers and leaders and mentors who address and enable your strengths, you will realize that the right fit at the right time is imperatively important. It has happened a number of times in my career, and most recently, I made a shift into venture capital, I want to say about 14 months ago. And it was an extremely difficult decision because I grew up at Cenovus. That was my home, my family, love all the people, and it was at a point in time where my talents were better served helping startups, were better served trying to help from the ground up, and it's not something I could do there. And realizing that it wasn't the right time in the company, it wasn't the right fit for me anymore, was the most egomaniacal, ego-driven decision I have ever had to make, because what the ego tells you is, if you don't fit in, that's on you. That's your problem. Something is wrong with you if you don't think this is a good place for you. And when you figure out that you belong somewhere, your strengths are actually maximizable, this is a new word, somewhere, that's when you realize you can have the most amount of impact. This is not the first time I've had to do that. The last time I had to do that was make a really difficult decision to actually ask to leave a job and go do something for $0, because this was my 1 year at Innovation Science Economic Development Canada. It worked out really well because Cenovus did enable me to go do that as a secondment. But when I had asked to leave, it was completely under, listen, I want to drive these innovation policies. I can't do it from here. I have to go to the economic strategy tables, and I have to do it there. When you realize where your talents and skills are required, and you go in that direction where they are required, rewarded, and the timing is right, that's when you have the most amount of impact. And that's when you also get to bring the most number of people with you in that journey. You will all make mistakes. I could stand here for 2 hours and talk to you about enormous mistakes I have made in my career, but every single one of them has been a massive expansion in my career. And I say this with a lot of grace and humility, because when I was 20, I thought, well, 21 maybe, I was on a mission to be the CEO of Suncor by 29. Spoiler alert, it did not happen. But I was on a mission, and I was very protective of my mistakes, or maybe I wouldn't do things that would allow me to make mistakes, because to me, mistake was a bad thing. And then over the course of my career, I've learned it is the best thing you can do. As leaders, if you can empower your team to make mistakes because you've got their back, that is the best form of leadership there is, because you learn as a leader and your staff learns from you. As individuals, when you make a mistake, to have the grace and humility to admit it immediately as soon as you know, that in itself is expansion. My very first boss at Jacobs Engineering, Alan Childs, day one, he said, listen, it's okay to make mistakes, but please tell me before we've built the facility. And that stuck with me. 20 years later, I still follow that. Just make sure you identify it before you make it. And the thing is, I get asked all the time, how did you do what you do, and where did you get your opportunities from? Because clearly my path was not a straight and narrow path. It was all over the place. I have a ton of amazing opportunities that I brag about on LinkedIn. I always say, listen, it's all about preparation, because I never actually plan out the next step. I just know sort of what I want, and I'm always gathering information. I'm always learning. And one of my favorite bosses, John Mitchell, those of you who know him at Suncor, he told me it was 2015, the oil and gas industry was contracting significantly, commodity egress, lots of challenges. And I, as a young go-getter, I wanted my next promotion, and he said, I can't guarantee you anything. What I will tell you is, one, cream will always rise to the top, so be the best at everything you do. And two, just know what you want next and keep preparing yourself for it so that when the opportunity shows up, you're there for it. And again, something that stuck with me, because every opportunity I've had has just come out from the blue. It's nothing I've ever gone looking for. I don't think I've ever applied for a job and got it. It's always been someone has reached out and said, hey, I think you'd be a good fit for this. Do you want to come on? And it has always worked out for me. And all of this should signal one thing. I credit a lot of bosses. Here's the thing. Every time I get asked, how did you get, so lately, the last 6 months, it's been about how did you get into venture capital? What's it like? It was a big leap from the oil and gas sector. You were a technical person. Now you're in finance. How did you do it? And I always just say, you know what? It was right time, right place, and someone took a chance on me. The thing is, the truth of the matter is, I am surrounded by leaders I've had since day one in my career who have encouraged me, who have inspired me, who have not peeled me apart because of what I was missing, who didn't see color or gender, or someone who speaks really softly or doesn't have a deep, assertive style, someone who just saw potential and ran with it. And to them, I'm infinitely grateful. But equally important were my peers. Those of you I know here and I've worked with for a number of years, you guys have cheered me on no matter what. Even if I wasn't doing the right thing necessarily, you've cheered me on and you've always had my back. So to me, community is really important, and that to me is what inclusion looks like. It's the community of people around you that elevate you constantly. That is how you advance in your career, and then you bring others along with you in the journey. Thank you.
Thanks, Anamika. That was a fantastic speech. My name is Stephanie DeMaio. I'm a civil structural engineer in training at Scovan. I'll be introducing our next speaker. She is sponsored by Fever Communications, a brand development agency with a rich legacy dating back to 1995. They work alongside clients to create powerful change, bring alignment, clarity, and ignite their Phoenix moment. Fever partners with purpose-driven organizations and serves as their internal marketing department. They work hand-in-hand with clients to co-create impactful brands, programs, and communications. You know your organization and purpose, and they understand how to deliver your story in a way that resonates with your audience. Together, you and Fever can create an invaluable brand. Our second keynote speaker is Heather Campbell. Her 3-decade career spans various sectors within the energy industry. She has a bachelor's degree in biochemical and chemical engineering from Western University and a master's degree in energy law and policy from the University of Dundee. She is also licensed with a professional engineering degree in Alberta and currently serves as an independent advisor for Rev Innovations. Beyond her professional endeavors, Ms. Campbell is an ardent community volunteer contributing to various organizations. Currently serving as a board director at Art Commons, she also holds positions in Western Engineering's Advisory Council and the Calgary Police Commission. She advises the BC Centre for Innovation and Clean Energy and the National Research Council of Canada's Industrial Research Assistance Program in the field of clean technology. Recognized for her impactful contributions, Ms. Campbell is a recipient of the Queen Elizabeth II Platinum Jubilee Medal and the Calgary Black Chamber's Black Achievement Award in Energy. Welcome, Heather Campbell.
Good afternoon. Oh, I actually don't need that because I have this whole. Sorry, I do that, but I really shouldn't because it's actually, I call this one petit gauche, but that for those of you that know, it's a whole thing. Hi, I'm Heather Campbell. I'm your keynote today. I'm honored to be so. I use she and her pronouns for later on. Okay, first up, that's the topic today. Fun and games, hey? All right, we're gonna start with a little bit of clarity. I'm gonna start with a concept that we need to stop using the terms difficult conversations and uncomfortable conversations. You all know what I'm talking about. About 3 years ago, 4 years ago, around May, all of your corporate and voluntary organizations started having these uncomfortable conversations and difficult conversations. Difficult for whom? Exactly. So I am not responsible for making you comfortable. It assumes that I am responsible for making you comfortable. My mother was a nurse. That is actually her job. I am an engineer. That is not mine. We're going to clear that up right now. You will be uncomfortable in this conversation. My ancestry is both those who were enslaved and those who enslaved. I am a living legacy of a stolen people on stolen land. Look here, we're all having difficult conversations. So speaking of which, and thank you, Anna Micah, we're at the Calgary Petroleum Club. Let's not ignore that I am a woman, and a Black woman for that matter, on the stage here in a facility that only saw fit to allow women to enter the door in 1989. That's my lifetime. We're not going to get into the racial dynamics of it because we don't have time for that. So let's talk about something we do have time for, intersectionality. In 1989, it was a bit of a big year. Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw coined the term intersectionality to describe how multiple forms of discrimination, power, and privilege intersect in Black women's lives. And in ways that, when connected with sexism and racism, are treated separately. It's since been used in different ways to talk about different forms of oppression and the intersection of those different forms of oppression for others, and how a group experiences different social and challenging opportunities. In September 2020, in his critique of the federal budget, Jason Kenney, who was then premier of this lovely province of Alberta, said intersectionality was a kooky academic theory. He wasn't talking about any of you. He was talking about me. So imagine just for a moment what that was like. You're a woman, a Black woman, perhaps this one, and you're the co-chair of the Anti-Racism Advisory Council for the province, and the premier at the time, that man, Jason Kenney, says that about intersectionality. Yeah, you can imagine what I thought. There are words I can't say, particularly in front of a child. So we're going to move on, but now you know a little bit about me. Okay, let's talk about some other things that get called all kinds of bad names. A just energy transition. Okay, let's clear things right up. In a just energy transition, no one is left behind. I'm going to say it again. No one is left behind. Alberta can actively deploy the same skill sets in a just energy transition as we do in our traditional energy sector. Let's think about a company that I love to talk about, Ever Technologies. Ever Technologies has a closed-loop geothermal system. Actually, Alberta was one of the first to fund it, which is only ironic because of the conversation we're having on renewables, but I'll digress and keep going. Either way, Alberta was one of the first to fund, yay. What's important about it is when they went to drill their geothermal wells. Who did they use to drill their geothermal wells? Anyone? Anyone? Let me tell you. They used precision drilling, founded in Calgary in 1951. That's a bit of old dogs, new tricks. No one is left behind. It's fear. It's fear that someone, somewhere, is going to not have a role or be left behind in the energy transition. That's what we're actually talking about. That's what we're tripping on. It's the inclusion part that we're having a problem with, okay? It's the conversation that we end up having on merit, right? When you get called a diversity hire. Yeah, I've been called that. I reckon a few of you have used that term. Well, this is what one looks like. Fear is a debilitating threat for some. And it's the fear that's motivating our inability to actually get into the energy transition because we can't get over the inclusion part. Inclusion is actually at the core and the root of a just energy transition. Inclusive innovation, like Donovan said earlier, is key to growing the economy, expanding markets, creating new and better opportunities for Albertans. That's all Albertans, not just some. Let's be mindful of intersectionality. We need to elevate our thinking and focus on more less self and more all of us and everyone in community. That's what's actually going to deliver a just energy transition. And remember, a just energy transition, it's not a bad thing. Having incremental women in STEM, and my bias, and I think Anna Micah's and Janice too, is engineering. In my view, it'll facilitate women participating in and purposely leading the energy transition. In Canada, gender equality in the economy could bring another $150 billion in GDP to the table. That's billion with a B. That's the prize we're leaving on the table. Let's talk about income gaps and the pieces that allow women to help them participate in and lead the energy transition. We're all engineers here, at least, well, 3 of us are. So we're gonna talk about APEGA because it's one of my favorite things. So every year, and I think Anna Micah and Janet get the exact same survey. I get a document that tells me exactly how much less I'm getting paid than my male peers. Every year, 28 years running. You're laughing, but you get the same report, right? Okay. So in 2021, it was the first year that APEGA data showed that for engineers in training, they actually had closed the wage gap. Up until that point, so like literally the beginning of time, from what I can tell, it was 2.4% less from day one that women engineers were paid. So they basically walked out of the U of A, got a job in Fort Mac, came out of their parents' basements, got into the pickup truck with the boxes that they had in their books, and somehow between like the front steps of their parents' house and the job in Fort Mac, they made 2.4% less. So I know that I make less, but I also know that I make less because I'm a Black woman. I live those intersectional realities. Intersectionality, not a kooky academic theory, Jason, but I have no quantitative data that actually proves it. I feel it, it's in my soul, but we don't actually collect race-based data in Canada, or in engineering for that matter. But, a thought. Working in the climate change and energy transition space as a Black woman, you are naturally influenced in a different way to understand energy justice and energy equity. I think about things like the tree canopy in Calgary. And then I think about where Black people live in Calgary. And what do you notice? They have no trees. So, in Calgary, most of us don't have air conditioning. But the people who don't have trees need air conditioning because trees provide natural shade and cooling. So, if you think about it, let's look at the tree canopy in Calgary. Let's look at the Northeast. There are no trees. So, we basically take the poorest people and we expect them to deliver on their environmental performance in the exact same way that we do. We basically force them to buy expensive air conditioning. Then we penalize them for using natural gas to fuel that air conditioning and then for generating emissions because we don't plant trees. Now, that's not energy policy. That's actually a lack of an intersectional lens on urban policy, planning, and housing. When I worked for the ISO, we were planning the Indigenous round of the Renewable Electricity Program, REP. That's why I'm a little sensitive on the renewables thing. That's actually my work, so. Either way, fast forward, I had to go to a webinar held by the Ontario ISO, and they were rolling out some learnings they had from a program on energy efficiency, primarily delivered in Northern Ontario. And they came on and they said their big aha moment was something like this. And I'm going to try to read this without my reading glasses. The quality of the housing stock in some Northern Ontario communities did not facilitate the wide uptake of energy efficiency measures as provided. I'm going to translate that for you. So what that means is if you have mold on your walls and you're living on reserve in Northern Ontario, you don't care about having a nest meter. If you don't have safe, clean drinking water, you could care less about a low-flow shower head. So, what does this look like practically? I can give you the big energy transition and energy justice, energy equity. What does it look like? Okay, tangibly, small modular nuclear reactors. Let's go. You electrify the electricity, because electricity right now, if you're talking about remote rural Indigenous communities, is provided by diesel. You electrify heating and cooling, same deal. HVAC, heating and cooling, all provided by diesel. Then you electrify mobility. So I'm talking about electric vehicles, heavy-duty trucking. Now you're talking about actually changing food security, because we know that food is trucked into northern communities, and you pay like $20 for like a box of Lucky Charms. Then we actually have spare electricity, and there you can actually do water treatment, and you can solve the sin of having an absence of safe, clean drinking water in Indigenous communities. I am not talking about energy for energy. I am talking about energy as a vehicle and a mechanism for reconciliation. That is what energy looks like in an energy equity and an energy justice mindset, tangibly done. I'm an engineer. When I speak with young engineers, and I do often, first thing I tell them is, well, learn how to write. We get it. It's not our greatest strength. We're working on it. Every day, a little bit better. But then I also tell them to think about how their design and their engineering work impacts others. How are they actively being inclusive in their thoughts and in their design? How is their work potentially going to further marginalize someone else? Who will be excluded? That's the actual challenge before us when we're talking about innovation and engineering and the energy transition. For International Women's Day and beyond, it's inspiring inclusion. When we elevate our thinking, we inspire others to understand and value women's inclusion, and we just get a better world that has all of us in it, not just some of us. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle. I work at Scovan in the accounting department. Our final speaker is sponsored by Colliers International. Colliers is a Canadian-owned commercial real estate company with a global reach including over 15,000 people in more than 400 offices in 68 countries around the world. Colliers believes in delivering great employee experiences that enhance business performance while optimizing real estate investments. Whether you're a developer, investor, landlord, or tenant, Colliers is a partner who invests in seeing your successes accelerated. Our final keynote speaker is Jana Mosley. Jana, president of NMAX Power, oversees the regulated transmission and distribution operations in Calgary, as well as infrastructure, engineering, and maintenance services. With over 25 years of industry experience, Jana has worked for various utilities, industrial consumers, generators, and Alberta electric system operators. She previously served as president at Simulin Consulting Incorporated, advising companies on electricity policy, grid connection, utility operations, and project management. A registered professional engineer with a PEGA, Jana owns a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from the University of Manitoba and is also a project management professional. She has an Institute of Corporate Directors designation and completed Harvard Business School's Advanced Management Program. She is a 2022 Calgary Influential Women in Business awardee and a 2023 Canada's Most Professional Women Top 100 Award winner. In addition to her professional work, Jana is an active mentor and advocate for women and is a member of the Western Energy Institute Board. Welcome, Jana.
Thank you for that introduction. As I get older, it gets longer. I don't know about that. Great messages to follow. Thank you for that. I think you're going to hear a few things that we're all going to hit on today for all of you. And thanks to Lindsay and others who organized this incredible gathering, and not unlike The ladies who went before me, it is always a nice opportunity to be at the Petroleum Club with a bunch of women. It's just, I love it. So I love International Women's Day events here. Diversity and inclusion is important to me, not just because I have been a minority in a male-dominated industry or industries, I guess I should say, for my entire career, but also because, as you can see there, I have 3 incredible daughters. And I believe strongly that diverse voices at the table creates a notable impact for our shareholders, for our customers, and our culture. And I've lived that during my time in my career and got to see that. We're all shaped by our experiences, our lessons, and the people in our lives. So I thought today I would share a little bit about some of my experiences and the impact that they've had in hopes that something hooks you and you're able to take something away and explore it further in your career and in your relationships. I grew up in Thompson, Manitoba. It's a northern mining town, and I spent time in the pulp and paper industry, in the oil and gas industry, and then the energy and utility industries. I was always encouraged to set goals when I was younger. So growing up, my father, who was an underground miner who moved into management later in his career, he sometimes mentioned at the dinner table, that he was never going to be able to move higher up in the company without a ring on his pinky finger. And when I was in grade 12, my physics teacher asked me what I was going to do after high school. And when I told him I was going to become a teacher, he challenged me and said, "I don't know if you're living up to your full potential. You should look into engineering." These influences caused me in my life to think about my long-term goals and think about my long-term plans. And I made an education decision that would allow me to use my strengths and have the lifestyle that I wanted. At every stage of life, focusing on the long-term game really does make a difference. And I just really want to encourage you all to set those goals. Sometimes it can be scary to put them on paper because we don't know if we're going to make it. But I think if we don't do that, then we don't have a shot. So please take the time to make those goals. And also think about the people in your life who are influencing you. You want to surround yourself with people who are bringing that influence that's going to help you advance those long-term plans. And think about who you're influencing, because I think we're all influencing people in this room and in our organizations. Starting a career can be intimidating. In addition to having clear goals to guide me along the way, I've learned how you can really help or hinder someone's career. As you are volunteering, starting a new role, switching companies, or have a promotion in mind, one of the things that I have learned is how important your brand is. And one of the ladies in the room actually helped teach me about this later in my career and got me to think a little bit about what I wanted my brand to be. We are developing our brand, or what people know us for, every single day. Build your brand. Know who you are, who you aren't, and who you want to be. Then own it. Live into it. You can't always control how people perceive you, but the more intentional you are about how you show up, the more likely it will be that they will experience you for the values and strengths that you want them to see. When I became a vice president in an operational business, I was surprised by all of the women who were excited for me and what it represented for them. Many minorities can't see themselves represented in leadership roles. I remember being in a succession planning meeting and hearing a male colleague say that one of our highest performing managers shouldn't be on the list for an operational promotion because she has kids and family is really important to her. This surprised me a little bit, and I discovered that I needed to be a voice for those who are not in the room. I was reminded that with all of the unconscious bias that still exists, we really need to focus on the strengths of those who are underrepresented and not call out the minor faults that are often overlooked for those who are the majority. So once you are in the room, be aware, listen, be better, and support each other. As your career progresses, opportunities will come your way that may be out of your comfort zone. I have learned that to achieve those long-term goals, you have to take risks. This can be very scary for women. We have often had higher expectations placed on us to get it right and to be perfect. And then we carry that fear of failure throughout our adult life. In my career, I have taken several risks. One of them was leaving the electricity industry in Alberta to move to Texas and work for Schlumberger. I loved working in oil and gas. US land in Texas is a bit of a different place to work, and I'm sure some of you have worked there or me right now. I recall a few scary moments back in the day where I'd have to visit the company man's trailer to use the bathroom because we didn't have any female washrooms out at site on the rig, or even peeing in a cup in my coveralls outside the rig because you couldn't go into the bush because you could hear rattlesnakes. So this is a very different time for women working out in the field, and I don't know what it's like there today. It was interesting. So know your limits, but do take risks. I am very grateful for that experience and my time down there. In my early 30s, I left the corporate world. I too was working for the Alberta Electric System Operator at the time, like Heather, and I went out to form a consulting practice. I learned so much about my various clients' businesses, the industries in which they're in, and brought into my network, while also earning far more than I would have in my previous role at the time. This has been another risk that has continued to pay dividends for me in my career. And finally, I took a risk coming to work for NMAX. I took a job that, quite frankly, I had no idea how I was going to do it. I was a project manager and engineer, and the job was all about business planning and financials. I learned the business from a whole other perspective, and 4 years later, I was running that business. So be unstoppable, take some risks. How do you commit to an unstoppable life? Well, that's where courage comes in. Courage is important for a couple of reasons. It's important because we need to keep stepping into the ring, and that's not always easy to do. I truly do believe that courage is a difference maker for women who choose to power through all the challenges we still face, and then for those who don't. I'll share with you 2 examples of courage from my career. Several years ago, a poor regulatory decision caused us to have the need to look at a transformation of our utility business. If we didn't, we would be earning half of our target returns, and that was not going to cut it for our board or for our shareholder. We needed to take action. We needed someone to lead and to get results. Here's where that personal brand can both haunt you and create opportunities. The CEO came knocking, and I ended up leaving a role that I loved to lead a group of my male peers who were much older than me at the time, and my much, much older boss, who did not necessarily believe the utility industry even had anything to do within the Me Too movement to improve. So this was a very different group of individuals than where I was as a young female in my career. The darkest day probably for me was walking out of the room after we had put months and months of work into these changes, and we were about to pull the trigger on what we needed to do. And the team was getting cold feet, and they were not on board. I had to issue a call to action. I had to remind us all of our shared accountability as senior leaders of the organization to make sure that we were making the difficult decisions to promote the longevity of our business. And we did persevere, and we achieved the results that our shareholders and our board expected from us. During this time, I had to lay off friends, people whose families I knew, but courage helped me stay accountable to the corporation and the required end goal of a sustainable business for our customers and employees that could thrive for many, many years to come. The second example of courage I'll share is quite personal. A couple years ago, I was encouraged to participate in the CEO process in my organization. I was on a high at this point in my career. My business was turning the corner culturally. We were exceeding earnings targets. I just finished the advanced management program at Harvard. And then I found out I didn't get the job. I had to face my board, my peers, the industry, and I had to come in to work every day and be the leader that my organization and that my team deserved. It is the hardest thing I've done since surviving a 5-day hike in the Rockies in my early 20s that an ex-boyfriend got me to sign up to do. I've never done it since. But I leaned into courage. Courage got me through the early days. I took time to reflect, and I took time to process. But it wasn't until a friend shared this quote with me that I really snapped out of where I was at. Yeah, it's a good one. You can have your ego or you can have your dreams. This woke me up. And then I reloaded, I reset my goals, and this quote sits at the top of my current plan. A big part of the way I've worked through my challenges in my career is through my team. team makes so much of a difference. So let's talk about team. Building a diverse team that has a high level of psychological safety, a culture of feedback, and a shared purpose is probably the most important thing you can do as a leader. I can't tell you enough how much of a game changer this is. When I set out to transform the organization, I knew I needed to rebuild the top team and ensure that we had a pipeline of diverse leaders that would sustain our culture long into the future. I believe that if you can see it, you can be it. So gender diversity in our management ranks was a key priority. I can tell you that it has changed the conversations we are having, our employee engagement levels, and our business results. They also say that the strengths that got you here won't necessarily get you there, and I believe this is very true. For years, I had built teams built with people that were like me, fun to hang out with and work with, very driven to achieve results. This made work easy. But it's only in the last 10 years that I shifted my thinking because, we weren't really achieving our full potential as a team or as an organization in that state. Now I look at building teams built with people with different backgrounds, experiences, strengths. I look at the gaps that we have on our leadership team, and I tend to be very intentional about creating the right tension and knowledge at the top table. I encourage you all to think about this as you advance your organizations and the work that you're doing around diversity. My current team provides real feedback to each other and to me. This is not always easy, but it makes us better. Feedback is a game changer. Foster it in your organization. You cannot become better if you don't know what's really holding you back. So for the leaders in the room, I encourage you, give your people this gift. And as you give and receive feedback, seek to understand. Be open to learning from those around you. Stay curious. I like this Adam Grant quote, encouraging us to unlearn as well. I really think this is key in the whole diversity, inclusion, and reconciliation journey that we're on. Let's challenge ourselves to unlearn some things that might be holding us or each other back. As I close, I just want to leave you with a few last thoughts. First, for all of the women in the room today, learn to validate yourself and not seek validation from anyone else. This can be really hard when you're progressing in your career and looking to climb the ladder, but it's key. As women, we try so hard because of how we were raised and societal norms. But because of this, we tend to question ourselves, and we're always looking for more. I think it's really important that we need to figure out if we truly want to be unstoppable, what is it that we actually need validation on? I think often we're looking for recognition, and really it is to be validated. If we listen to our minds, our physical reactions, and our emotional reactions, we can validate ourselves. We can really dial ourselves back in and redefine what we're telling ourselves. We can define our own truth. We can define what we need from others and what we don't need from others. And then we can move forward and own that truth, communicating our thoughts and our needs, and be free from our desire to please and be accepted by everybody else. For the leaders, decision makers, and influencers in the room, we've heard this already today, get uncomfortable. I love this quote from Seth Godin, leadership is scarce because few people are willing to go through the discomfort required to lead. This scarcity makes leadership valuable. It's uncomfortable to stand up in front of strangers. It's uncomfortable to propose an idea that might fail. It's uncomfortable to challenge the status quo. And it's uncomfortable to resist the urge to settle. When you identify your discomfort, you have found the place where a leader is needed. If you're not uncomfortable in your work as a leader, it's almost certain you are not reaching your potential as a leader. In our companies, let's be honest, the front line can keep production going and keep gas and electrons flowing. But creating long-term impact and change requires a leader. Leadership is causing something to happen that otherwise wouldn't. Leadership is not easy. It is a privilege, and it comes with responsibility. It requires vulnerability. It requires courage, curiosity, and teamwork. Alberta is such a special place filled with so many talented and committed and dedicated people. As we advance diversity and inclusion, the careers of ourselves and others, let's continue to think big. Don't play small. You are meant for great, great things. Thank you.
in case you wonder what really happens during a panel discussion, the panelists complain about the chairs and our legs being too short or the seats being too uncomfortable, and now you're getting the back room, the inner workings, the exciting things. So again, thank you so much, and I know this isn't formally part of a panel discussion, but I'm going to ask you to join me in thanking our 3 amazing keynotes again. Wasn't that exceptional? Yeah, I'm fanning all over here, not just because of a hot flash, but that's another story. I mean, it was just terrific to learn from these incredible women, and so grateful that they shared their insights, as they will continue to do as we engage in some dialogue now. So as a friendly reminder, if you have a question for one of the panelists, as Lindsay indicated, please use the QR code that's on the cards in front of you, and the question will come to me. I will put on my glasses so that I can hear better and see your question and make sure that we have time to address that with our esteemed panel members. So I'm Melanie Peacock, and it's my pleasure to be here this afternoon and to facilitate the discussion and to learn more from our esteemed keynotes. So there was themes that ran through each of your presentations, and it's interesting because I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but all the better to hear you with. Yes, I have big ears. I actually heard a young lady named Sarah speaking to Heather about this topic, and that's mentorship. So often, right, we go to social media, we read articles, we look at research, and we hear over and over again, especially as women, if we're going to elevate inclusion and represent ourselves and be courageous and take risks, but we need to find a good mentor. So I would like to ask each of you, what does it mean to have a good mentor? Like, what are some of the qualities or characteristics that someone should look for? And how did you find a good mentor? So Jana, we'll start with you, please.
I've had a few different mentors throughout my career. I think sometimes it just depends on where you're at, what season in life you're at, or what your career goals are. So not all mentors are for forever. When I'm looking for somebody to really more, I think about sponsorship probably more than mentorship, but somebody who is going to cheer me on, be that voice for me in the room that I'm not in, and coach me around some of the decisions or goals I'm setting for myself. I first of all just want to be able to feel like I can connect with them and be honest and vulnerable with them. I think I need to be inspired by them and be looking up to them in some way, shape, or form, because I'm obviously wanting to follow their advice or the coaching or feedback that they have for me. So a high level of trust in that regard as well. And I think somebody who's going to give me straight talk, and not a lot of people will tell you what you really need to hear. So looking for that in somebody that's mentoring me.
Thank you so much. That really ties into your talk about feedback, right? That being open to that feedback and being willing to hear sometimes things we don't want to hear, but it has to come from somebody you respect and trust. Well said. Thank you. And Amika, your thoughts?
For me, I think mentorship is really about fit. So I've had mentors who were set up through some program throughout my career where the relationship didn't really continue, and then some I've had as mentors for over a decade, and it's all because of exactly what you said, Jana. It's straight talk, and one of the best pieces of advice I got from a mentor was, I may not be able to facilitate your next job, but I will actually be able to call you out on your BS. And most importantly, never water cooler chat or whine or complain inside your organization. You want to do any of that, you either do that with your spouse or you do that with me. And that relationship has been also really helpful, because sometimes you just need to vent, and then they tell you, chill out, man. This is
this is not a thing.
This is yeah. And I think that relationship just I've had the opportunity to nurture mentors through a decade, and I appreciate every bit of advice that they've ever given me.
Thank you. That's funny how I haven't read that in an academic paper, that your mentor should tell you to chillax. I think that's sorely lacking. Good point. Heather, your thoughts?
So as I was telling Sarah, and I'm looking for her now, my mentor is Sarah, Sarah Shortreed, and I'll say her name out because Sarah and I met when I was still in engineering school and she had already graduated, but we were sitting on a Women in Engineering committee at Western. So Sarah's been my mentor now for 30 years. and she still takes me for dinner. Yeah, 100%. It's, she actually gave me my engineering ring, so she's literally the only person that's ever put a ring on my finger. Truth, man, truth. This is what this day's about. So I think the key thing for me is having an authentic relationship with your mentor. So it can't just be like, oh, wow, you're doing some really interesting things and I want to do them just like you. No, it's about there's a level of conversation and just natural relationship that Sarah and I have. Like, I'll give it to you like in like real terms. Both Sarah and I are committed to actually being able to age in place. So we were at dinner talking about literally what I needed to do to ramp out my front steps so that I could actually get in. I'm not even kidding. Okay, so that I could like literally, you know, use a mobility device or a wheelchair or something like that later in life to be able to get in and out of my home. The waiter comes up and he's just like, ladies, more wine? And like Sarah, who's a mechanical engineer, is literally giving me, well, Heather, you know the ratio is like 12-1. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And he's just like, who are you? Right? But there's a moment of just that authenticity that has to happen there. To Anna Micah's point, I also have another mentor who, when you're dealing with a number of, I'm just going to call it the issues about being a woman of color in this city and being a disruptor, where you need a safe space. And I have that as well. And I call it the antidote to the crazy making, because that space, you will literally start to think that you are the one that is ill. So let me think about it. So to that end, like the conversation that I most recently had, and it was a situation where we tend to become a bit like the boiled frog. My dear friend Todd Hirsch, many of you know, was a senior economist, was a chief economist for ATB Financial. He wrote this lovely book about the boiling frog dilemma. And it's this idea where we don't even recognize what's happening to us because we've been in the water for so long. And I expressed to this person who was my mentor, and I said, yeah, so this kind of happened in my time with the police commission. And she just stopped the conversation. He's like, Heather, that's harassment. How do you not understand that? And I had to sit back and go, oh, so that wasn't a normal experience for me to, and again, you need that, it's not the BS meter, it is someone who sees your experiences with such clarity when you are clouded.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. That's very profound, and that really links back to what Anamika shared about playing to your strengths and understanding that if you aren't understanding your strengths and not showing them and not having them illuminated, perhaps it's not you, perhaps you're not in the right place. And a mentor can help you with that. You know, one of the things we don't talk a lot about too, and I can share this from an HR background, is it's okay to move on from a mentor. You can outgrow a relationship. And it's also okay to not select somebody as your mentor or to terminate that relationship. It's okay to have that be an evolutionary process. And we don't discuss that enough when it comes to mentorship. It's not, even if they put a ring on your finger, it's not necessarily a lifetime commitment, but we won't go there. We won't go there.
We'll discuss.
Will we discuss or disgusting? Okay. We've talked, you know, about such positive things, and we've had such inspirational messages from our keynotes today, and I certainly don't want to be the Debbie Downer, womp womp, but we have to face that there's barriers that we encounter, and it would be naive or inappropriate to not acknowledge that. So we'll start with Anamika. What would you say is a barrier you've encountered in your career, and how did you overcome it?
I could speak to many. When I was my first 5 years of engineering, I had a supervisor who pulled me aside and said, listen, I really admire your drive and you're so ambitious, but you have the trifecta of disadvantages going for you. So you might want to consider what your ambition really should look like. And by trifecta, he said, and these are not your faults. You walk into a room with a big smile, and everyone sees you as a target. So maybe you want to think about how you can change that. Well, I did see it as a big barrier. The other two were, you're a woman, you're in operations in the field, and people don't necessarily respect you, blah, blah, blah. The thing that took me many years to learn, and this is why I talked about playing to your strengths, is that if you are not authentic to who you are at all times, you will drain yourself entirely. And there was a period of time where I would actually, much like Elizabeth Holmes, change my voice. I would try to speak deeply, and I would like hold back my smile, and then I would try to mimic some of the other female leaders that were around me, who were, fast, who would talk really fast. And I would go home with a neck and shoulder pain every single day. And this is my early 20s. Like, I should not have that kind of pain. And I would crash on the couch, and I'd be asleep by 8:30 or whatever. Like, no 25-year-old should be doing that. And it took me many years to realize I'm always going to be the girl that walks in the room with a big smile. That is what I do. I smile all the time. I will always be someone who speaks with the voice that I have right now. But I will also always be the hardest working person I have ever met. I will also be someone who's always striving to excel. And if I can just focus on those things, which is brand new, I would say last 5-6 years kind of wisdom, that if I just focus on those things, the other things will also help me in some way. And one of my wonderful colleagues, we were just chatting about how she's just having a really hard time with her role. And she's like, I should Elizabeth Holmes this a little bit. Start dressing like Steve Jobs. And I was like, no, girlfriend, you don't do that.
No.
And the barriers, they keep coming. Every time you level up, there will be a new barrier. Yes. Every time you level up, there will be some discomforts. Jana, you talked about it in your talk. It will be uncomfortable, and there will be someone invariably who thinks you should not be there, that you don't belong there, and they will treat you as such. It's all, at the end of the day, it is all you. And when I talked about how we just beat ourselves up over the one thing that we did poorly or the one thing we don't do well, if you can hone in on and just hold on to your strengths all the time, that what you bring to the table is valuable, you're having an impact, you are doing something for the greater good, that will take you further than anything else, and that's how you get over the barriers. You can't do it by dwelling on what the barriers are. Kind of have to be an eternal optimist around that.
Yeah. Thank you. And a barrier is like a hurdle, right? And how do hurdlers get over a hurdle? They run at it and then they jump. They don't stand there and overthink it, and they don't listen to people on the sidelines tell them they can't jump over the hurdle. So given us some tremendous insights. Not surprised at all. We're getting some amazing questions from the audience and our participants here today, so thank you for that. So I'm going to turn this over to Jana. We can't have everybody answer all these questions, or we'll be here until next International Women's Day. And I don't mean by Friday, I mean 2025. Jana, what can the men in the room do to inspire inclusion?
It's a good question. First of all, thank you for being here, and I'm sure you're here because you're curious and you're supporting people in your organization on their journey. So I appreciate that and appreciate you. I have worked with amazing men in my career. I wouldn't have had the opportunities, been prepared to take advantage of being in the right place at the right time if it wasn't for the male colleagues and leaders that I have worked for. I don't think I worked for a female until I don't know, the first 10, 15 years of my life probably. So a lot of, I've only actually had one female boss ever. I would say to all of you to just, one, continue to just treat any minority person who you're working with just like everybody else. I mean, I think you said it earlier, just do the right thing. And understand where they're coming from, understand what their challenges or their feelings might be. Women like to cry. We can't help it. Like, I'm a tough person and I cry and I hate it. And the number of times my boss has handed me the Kleenex across the table is embarrassing. But it's just a thing that sometimes can happen. And if you have daughters, you probably know that as well. But it often frustrates men. Just go with it. And just support them and understand what their perspective is, because it's often quite different perhaps than what your experience is or how you might see it. And that's the beauty of diversity at the table, is because we can each bring all these different perspectives and we reason through them differently. So I would just be curious, ask the questions, understand what their goals are, and just be there for them and advocate for them and cheer them on. That would be the biggest thing I think that you can do. But also not treat them special, because we don't want to be treated special.
Yeah, thank you. That's very profound. And you talk about emotion, and this ties to Annamika's point about bringing our whole authentic selves to our roles and to our work. And I think about my own experiences, and when you share about emotion, if I were to write my leadership book, I think I would call it Crying in the Bathroom. Seriously, because I can't think of how many times I've had to leave a situation and been told you cannot be emotive. Do not smile, do not laugh. Bueller, no, don't show your emotion, and certainly don't cry in front of other people, because that's a weakness. But I invite us, all of us, to, of course, we want to be professional, but part of being professional is being human and showing those emotions. Heather, I'm going to move the next question to you, which is, what do you do? How do you suggest recommendations when the board is afraid of change? When the leaders, the people steering the ship, are afraid of change?
Oh, so I'm navigating that right now, and part of that is policy. You have to inspire courage. Use that, but you also have to know what the right thing is to do. There are so many things that would not exist in this world right now if we were waiting for the data, if we were waiting for it to be popular. I joke about my specialty being arson, because I'm ready to burn it down every day. So, let's talk about the wage gap, okay? And I'm going to talk about it in really practical terms, and I'm going to talk about APEGA and engineers. Engineers love data. We get that report every year. It's spliced. There's no pivot table they haven't come up with on that thing, right? It's a thing of beauty. That data is sent in by our employers. Our HR professionals know exactly how much less they're paying us because they send in the information. So here's my idea, and trust me, this is on the side of arson. So just you need to roll it back in terms of how you actually would apply it. But wouldn't it be interesting if APEGA, as a regulatory body, said, "Hello, company XYZ, you have this collection of engineers, and we noticed that the data that you sent us, you are paying your particular women engineers 3% less. We're not even going to talk about Jana's salary, because we know that they actually don't even put that on the chart. They don't put the M5 and M6 on there because it would expose her and Joy and a bunch of other women, right? Okay? So let's get back to this. So you have this data, and we know that you're paying your women engineers 3% less. Tell you what, you need to close that wage gap in a year and inform us that you've done so, and provide that additional salary and back pay to those women engineers, or we're going to withdraw your license and your permit to practice." I'm a Black woman, so I'm all about reparations. I would like my money from the beginning of time. I would like, no, I'm not kidding.
And not Canadian Tire funds, I assume.
No,
so
no,
Heather,
I don't want gift cards,
Yeah.
right? I literally want my money from 1996.
Yeah.
So if you're actually, like, so do the math. Like, we're all worried about, oh, you know, like, well, what's the business case for this? And how would we, like, you know, like, that's what the board is always worried about. You don't want to actually do that calculation. Can you imagine if you had to pay me my wage gap from 1996 to today with interest, and you had to do it for Anna Micah, and you had to do it for Jenna, and we've all worked in the energy industry our entire careers? No, you don't want to do that calculation. You can't afford it. Do the right thing because it's the right thing and you're morally guided, not because you're actually waiting for the money to actually miraculously show up on the spreadsheet.
There you go. Well, you heard it here first. Where else would you have a panel discussion where you had arson and fire? And by the way, Heather will be signing autographs by the dumpster in the back, a true dumpster fire for anyone who's interested.
The police know where to find me. It's
you
fine.
know where to find. That's right. I just wish you'd tell us what you really think. No, okay.
Can I add to that?
Please do.
A couple of things. So I think one of the important pieces of advice for anyone, especially early in your career, and for those of you who are parents, or for those of you, men or women in the room, who are leaders and really influence this area of your organization, my advice to you is, you know, make sure you're advocating for yourself very early in your career, because the gap that Heather is talking about only grows over time. So the more that you can level set that from the beginning, the more that as an organization and from your HR practices, you can be level setting that right from the start, then you start to not see that gap created later and later, because it is challenging as people have different years of experience, and they take on different promotions or risks. You can start to see those gaps created in your organization, and I think it's really important to have the values in your org to take a look at that and say, we're going to correct that everywhere where we see that. The other piece of advice I would give you is just to be understanding what the values are of the company that you work for, or if you're going to that organization, or for those of you in that company. And you should be choosing to work for companies who are quite dedicated to making sure that we don't have this situation, and that where we do have it, it's being corrected in a short amount of time. And those organizations do exist.
Yes, they do.
And it's something that I think you're seeing a lot of companies focus on now. So get out there, advocate for yourself. Don't start creating a gap early, and just make sure your values are aligned with that of your organization, because companies are coming around on this.
Yeah, thank you for that. And advocate for others.
Absolutely.
And you all address that in your talks as well. Right? Be the voice in the room for others, that concept of being an ally. And I also love that you've illuminated to come back to an organization's values. You know, that's another way that change can be implemented, and board members and leaders can hold their feet to the, oh, you're contagious. I was going to say hold their feet to the fire. There's a theme going on. But it's true, if we come back to the values and the things that they state, right? I walk through many organizations, you see on the wall, you know, employees are our biggest asset. But then you have to go and read the small print. We treat them like crap, but they're our biggest, right? If they're really going to be your biggest asset, live those values, hold the leadership accountable. We've had another interesting question when we talk about change and inclusion, about neurodiversity in the workplace. So, Amina, do you have comments about how to elevate and include more neurodiverse individuals into our work?
I think I'll go back to what I started with, which is doing the right thing for all stakeholders involved. If you have an individual who brings a certain strength, regardless of what their other capacities might be, you focus on that strength, because that is exactly what is required for the job at hand. If you're always hiring for the job at hand, if you're always training for the job at hand, other things don't matter. And to me, I think if you are excluding people because of how they think, how they perceive the world, you're excluding, at the risk of sounding fluffy, you're excluding magic, because magic happens when you bring in perspectives and thoughts that you yourself couldn't possibly have come up with. And to me, I think that that's the power of a beautiful organization that can excel, that can disrupt itself.
It is truly magic.
Go ahead, Heather. It comes back to, I think, the second last thing I was talking about in terms of, as an engineer, and it's being able to ask yourself the critical questions about your work. Who is excluded? Who is further marginalized because of this work that I'm doing? Who needs a different solution or a parallel solution? How do I make this inclusive? We're talking about the inclusion of neurodiverse folks within the workspace and within the economy, but it's really we don't even design around our innovation and our tech solutions so that they actually work for women, or they work for women of color. So we've got to really stretch our thinking and stretch our questions that we ask ourselves when we're doing things.
And so this is a lovely segue to the next question, which was asked directly for you, Heather, was what would you suggest, and you've really covered this, but we'll ask you to elaborate on what can be done, what would you suggest as a Black woman in this industry? What specific improvements would you like to see?
In the energy industry, specifically?
Let me read the question. Please hold. If you could change one thing about your industry, yes, to make it a better experience for Black women, what would that be? One thing, putting you on the spot.
I'm going to say it is the inclusion of Black women and Indigenous women in designing, developing, and leading energy transition solutions. The technology and the innovation and the work that we're thinking about, if you talk to Indigenous elders, and specifically women, they've been doing this since the beginning of time. If you talk to Indigenous people globally, this is work that they've been doing since the beginning of time. We need to sort of un-Eurocentric and unshackle ourselves from the bonds of colonialism. We're called to be decolonizers. And so part of our energy transition and part of the success of the energy transition will be excelling at decolonization, and that's not just physically, but spiritually and mentally.
Powerful, thank you. The next question really ties in, Annemieke, to the story you told us at the beginning of your speech, but I'm going to start with having Jana answer this question. What can a leader do to change the pipeline, the talent pipeline, right? We want a diversity within our organizations. We want to inspire and elevate inclusion. But what do we do when the talent pool just isn't there?
Yeah, I think you've seen good progress on this in organizations and in our industry. I know we've got a ways to go yet, but I really do believe that we are tearing away at that. From my experience, I think a couple things. First of all, partnering with the people in your organization who are experts in this. So partnering with your HR department in terms of what it is you're looking for, what skill sets you need, and how do you kind of cast a wider net and think more outside of your own silo of perhaps what part of the organization you're running. There could be people in your own company that you might be able to move around and create more diversity on a specific team if that's what you're looking to do. I think certainly a commitment is part of the issue. You're making that commitment as a senior leadership team that you truly do value diversity and inclusion. I think a lot of people might say it, but I'm not sure they truly believe in the value. And maybe that's because they haven't seen it yet. So they might have to take a leap of faith and look at some of the data that truly suggests that customers, stakeholders, everybody benefits when you have that diversity. And then weave it into your succession and development planning and your coaching and mentoring. So as a leader, often I will challenge a leader of mine who's looking to hire and say, okay, well, that's interesting, let's look at the makeup of your team. I know you really like person A for these reasons, but do you think that maybe they're a little bit too similar to how you are, or how you operate, or what your experience is, or what diversity do they bring to the team, and really challenge them. And often, the odd time I've had to actually say, no, I really, really would like you to try this. And every single time when they've gone that route, if they were hesitant, they're thanking you later because they actually are seeing the different conversation that they're now having at the table because they've got this different perspective. So I think just really be committed to it and be willing to encourage, and then perhaps just like parenting sometimes, if your kid isn't quite getting to the right decision on their own, every once in a while you might have to help them make the decision, and then they usually can come around. But that commitment's super important. And then I think the other thing we're doing in operational industries is looking at the pipeline much sooner than when they get in the door. So what's happening both at secondary education institutions, but also much, much earlier. If you look at data out there right now around labor and just the desires and ambitions and interests of people who are 18 plus right now and what they're interested in. Some people project that we really won't have a big surge in workforce capability till after, I think it's 2040. And so that's a bit of an issue. So we really need to be, for our specific industries, focusing right in elementary school on helping people be curious and excited about the energy industry, about electricity, and have them seeing that this is an important path for them to be engaged in and create, so that we have that talent available to us several years out.
Yeah, very field of dreams, but it's true. If you build it, they will come. But we have to be responsible for building that pipeline. And Jana, thank you for your comments, because the mirror effect, my friends, is real. It is researched, it's shown. We like to be around people that remind us of ourselves.
It's true.
And if we don't challenge our leaders, if we don't hold them accountable, things are not going to change. So that accountability factor. And I knew I liked you. I kind of stopped listening as soon as you talked about the HR person being the expert. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. No, I started to. Annemieke, same question over to you.
I'm going to give you an example. I'll give you two examples. One, some of you may know Lorraine Mitchell-Moore.
Yes.
She's one of my mentors. And one of the things she did when she went in as president of Shell Canada, she mandated that for every job application that was out there, the pool of applicants had to have at least 50% women. And the reason she did that was because almost, serially, the critical key roles went to the exact same type of people. And she's a big champion for women, but she also wanted to bring diversity of thought in those critical roles. And yes, to the mirror effect comment, at the top, it all starts at the top, right? So the CEO will hire someone that they can trust. And what does trust look like? It looks like someone that looks like you, talks like you, thinks like you, says yes to whatever you say. And then they're on. So she deliberately mandated that, both to make sure there was inclusion of women, but also promote diversity of thought. And it worked wonders, because as soon as she did it at the level below her, it started to cascade through the organization. And Shell Canada today is very diverse in how they hire and promote and include, not just women, but different types of people and diversity of thought. The second example I'll use is when I was heading up innovation at Cenovus, that was my last role at Cenovus, there was a moment where, so I had about a week to figure out, this was post-merger with Husky, I had 1 week to figure out what my team would look like, what our mandate was going to be, what we were going to deliver. and not a lot of time, and there was a lot of unsolicited opinions on who stays, who goes, because I had to cut the combined team by 40%. And a lot of the opinions that were offered, unsurprisingly, were people who were of a different type of behavior, caliber, or the disruptors, if you will, who didn't just get along with, the core group that ran the business, sort of thing. And it took a lot of courage to say, nope, this person stays because of here's the list of values they bring. And that was a very, it would have been very easy for me to just take those opinions and think, okay, this is how I fit in if I just do what my next level, what the executive leadership is suggesting I do. So it created a lot of friction, I would say, with some of the core group. But ultimately, we resulted with a team that was actually a highly capable team. And it wasn't about the breakdown of gender, race, religion, allegiance, whatever, right? It was about talent. And very naturally, because it was about talent, the team, it would right down the middle. It was half women, half men. And it wasn't even a deliberate thought that I want this team to be half women, half men. It was all about talent.
That's very insightful. Again, this ties so well to your keynote about doing the right thing. It sounds so simple, and yet we've managed to make these simple concepts so complex, right? If we could just get back to the basics. All right, now back to basics. One final question here for you, Heather. Okay. I love the idea of energy transition, but how does the grid support the increased use of electricity? And what can we anticipate for rising electrical costs?
Well, I get my electricity at home from Jana.
Yes.
So
I know. That's why I didn't ask you.
So
I just saw the potato being lobbed. Duck and weave,
it's okay.
duck and weave.
So I think we need to stop thinking about this as an either or. It's a yes and solution. And I think we need to be responsible about being a yes and solution. We're in an interesting place in Alberta. We have a deregulated grid, which I don't think is a bad thing. I actually think should be an opportunity for substantial market solutions for energy and power generation. What we need, in my view, is to actually recover from, I'm going to say, some heel dragging and some denial. If you listen to Peter Terzakian, lovely man, bright man, he talks about the denial, the disruption, and then the transition. And we're just coming out of the denial phase, right? So we're in this really uncomfortable disruption phase where, we didn't make some substantial investments in technologies that could have put us on a pathway to having substantial emissions reductions in our power generation. We're still talking about carbon capture and storage, which is a wonderful thing, but we need to be doing, not talking. And we have the technology. My former team was looking at second generation capture technologies, right? So we know how to do this. When we're talking about renewables and everybody's like, oh, well, the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine and la 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 and wah 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 and yeah, and like, oh, and pristine landscapes and blah blah. Like, come on, please, okay? We've known that we've needed energy storage and mass scale energy storage for 20 years. What were we waiting for, right? We were hoping that we wouldn't. Like, we were doing this whole, what's the bird that puts its head in the sand?
Ostrich.
Thank you.
Not a peacock.
Sorry, the chemo burned out some things anyway. So it's like, it's a yes and solution. And, when I'm thinking about a solution like an SMR, you're looking at 300 megawatts. Again, for me, I'm not thinking about it from a sole energy perspective and energy just for energy. I am looking to see energy become a vehicle and a mechanism for reconciliation versus us versus them, versus who owns the land. We need to think about what it is that we need to deliver in the future. And like in Calgary, we're talking about having 10 million people. Those 10 million people need housing, they need heat, they need water, they need mobility, and we're faffing about like making, lobbing shots across the bow at the federal government. We don't have time for that. We have work to do. And this is what Calgarians are really good at, getting down to business. Let's get her done. Like enough chitter chatter and foolishness.
Well, what a segue, because we've certainly not had enough chitter chatter. I could sit and listen and learn from these three amazing individuals all day. But I do know that we want to leave some time for some additional networking and for you to chat with one another and to maybe grab another beverage. But before we close things out, of course, I want to recognize that we heard some beautiful themes, empowering, impactful themes here today about courage, about voice, about authenticity, about difference making. So I can say that I'm truly inspired and engaged, and I hope you are all as well. I'd be remiss if I didn't once again thank all the sponsors that did an amazing job today. Of course, thanking Donovan and the team at Scovan. We'd like to give a special shout out to Lindsay, who never asks for any thanks, but does an amazing job. She's saying, no, she did not ask me to say this, but we all wanted to thank Lindsay for sure. Heather and Annamika and Jana specifically asked me to thank her as well. I want to just wrap up on a really positive note. Now, we didn't get through all of the questions, but I know our speakers will stay around for a little bit as well. But three things I want to end on. Please thank Jana for bringing up crying. Please don't make me cry. It's a legitimate reaction. It should be accepted just as much as traditional boardroom anger.
Yes.
Hear, hear, and Buddha anger. Like, come on, passion, but not right on, yay. I had to look up neurodiversity. I am dyslexic and can honestly say I look at things differently. It's my strength and my weakness. Hear, hear. Yes. Here's here to perspective and looking at things differently. Let's hear it. And last but not least, somebody shared anonymously, how exciting. Last week, we celebrated the announcement of the first female CEO of an oil sands company. Woo-hoo! Let's highlight this amazing achievement.
This is true.
Thank you again, Jana, Annamika, and Heather. Thank you to all of you. Go forth and continue to be amazing. Thanks, everyone.